where the first blow was to my face. He busted my nose open. I went down instantly because, he's a man, he's strong, and it caught me off guard. I was like, whoa. And I remember him busting my face and just the blood coming down and kind of just being frozen on the ground and being very angry and grabbing me from my hair and dragging me through the house while the kids were screaming and him kicking me and stomping on me and got on top of me and just kept kicking my butt.
I was in the room for hours, and he would just intermittently come in, beat me up, curse at me, just go on these rants, and I couldn't leave the room.
And then he tried to engage in sexual activity. I would say no. He would say, okay, that's fine. And then he just kind of got on top of me and proceeded from there. It was kind of like putting all of his body weight on me, and I would say no, and he just kind of proceeded.
If he would call me a name like bitch or tell me to shut up, and if I said the same thing back, it wasn't okay. So then that's when I would get hit. It was as if there wasn't any reciprocity in it. So it really made me feel like I didn't have a voice, and it made me feel like I was really alone.
I truly believed that if I tried to leave, he was going to kill me. And not only that, but he was going to kill my family.
I think of blood because there was always a lot of blood every time he beat me. You know what I'm saying? There was always a lot of blood, a lot of pain.
I was involved in a relationship where there's domestic violence for 10 years, and I've been out of that relationship for over 2 years now.
What occurred was basically a rape at the hands of my daughter's father, and at the time we were staying in university family housing, so it occurred there.
When I was young, I was with a young man, and we had a relationship. I ended up having 2 children from him, and he was extremely violent. I was with him from the age of 14 to 20. So there was 6 years in between, 2 children that were born in the middle of this, and he was extremely abusive.
It was always just the 2 of us. We never went out anywhere. We didn't have a group of friends that we hung out with all together, and nobody knew what I was going through. I mean, they knew that I had problems in the relationship, and none of them really liked him because he isolated me from them. But at the same time, they had no idea that he was abusing me. I felt like I was in a suspended state of intense fear. Like, there's absolutely no way I can leave this relationship.
Like, I can remember a lot of times, like, being in the car and knowing that I'm going to be, he's going to take me into his apartment, and I'm going to be in there, and I'm not going to be able to leave. And then, but looking at the cars, looking at the community, and wanting internally, like, screaming, asking for help, but knowing that if I do that, it's only going to be worse. I remember this one time when we were in his car, and I knew we were going to get into the apartment, and I don't know what was going to happen. I thought I was going to die. I really did, and I was really fearful for my life at that time. But I saw a classmate on the other side of the street in the park, and I thought, if only they could read my mind and know that I was going through this. If only they can maybe get some help. But I didn't know what the help was.
In all honesty, I don't remember. But that's the reality of trauma. That's the reality of domestic violence. I don't remember the first time. And I'll probably go home now for the next few days and think about that. When did it happen? When was the first time? I don't remember, to be honest with you. I just have a lot of different memories of different times. Does that make sense? Because of how severe the beatings were. Does that make sense? I don't remember. I honestly don't. I don't know when it started.
The personal relationships that students create in school are a regular part of college life. Relationships can be wonderful and can often help relieve the stress that comes with being a college student.
But sometimes relationships can go bad, and a high-stress environment can only add to the problem. One person in a relationship begins to pressure or to try to control the other person's life. One person may begin to treat the other negatively when they hurt their feelings, isolates them from friends, stalks them, physically hurts them, or sexually assaults them.
They are in a violent relationship, intimate partner violence. This violence has a particularly serious impact on children in a college family, and it jeopardizes the safety of the larger campus community.
At college, partner violence shows up among students and professors, in dating relationships, in residence halls, apartments, and family housing. The typical academic and financial stresses are compounded when there is abuse in a relationship.
Additionally, other factors such as ethnicity, immigrant status, language, being a student parent, cultural values, and gender identity can make seeking help much more difficult.
People don't ever really recognize the signs of verbal abuse until, I guess, for me, I never really recognized it until someone said something about it to me, until my dad told me. He just came to me one day and said, "Why are you letting him treat you like this?" And I took a step back and I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, he isn't treating you the way you should be treated. He's manipulative and he's mad at you all the time. And you're not leaving the house. You're not doing anything besides school because of him. And I never really looked at it that way. It's just my time was spent talking to him, vice going somewhere else to go hang out with, or to make friends even.
What an abusive relationship is. You immediately think of a battered woman. So if he's not beating me, then I'm not in an abused relationship. It doesn't matter that he mentally abuses you. It doesn't matter that he sexually abused you. He's not beating me, so this is not an abusive relationship. So I think I kind of still, I actually had that mentality, didn't know what the line was of abuse.
The first time that the abuse became physical was about 8 months into the relationship. And at that point, I felt like, this is abuse. Looking back, it was pretty much from day one, as far as verbal abuse and mental abuse. But even at that point, when it became physical, I still didn't really think of it as abuse, because there were so many other factors. I justified his behavior because, maybe I provoked it, or maybe it's just a one-time thing. And so it took a very long time for me to really realize that I am being abused.
There's a huge expectation in society about being a man, and there's you have to be tough and you can't be treated this way. So in my experience, it really made me question, again, the same questions a lot of people ask themselves, like, what kind of a man are you? Like, it made me I had to ask myself those questions. But in retrospect, looking at, being gay and still kind of having to find myself at the time, it was an added element. And just because I think I was still kind of having to find myself. I still didn't really even know who I was at that time as far as my sexuality and as far as manhood. So having that just kind of tweak everything.
So yeah, I think I felt more bound to him just because of seeing, like, my grandmother. She was very loyal to my grandfather. My mom, she eventually found her husband or whatever. It was just like this kind of one set, my aunt was with one man, it was just kind of this unsaid rule, like, this is what you do. This is the right way. This is what, a mujer does. She goes with her one man and that's it, good or bad, up or down, left or right, that's it, You just be faithful, you hang in there through thick and thin. So it was just kind of, I guess, like an unsaid thing, an expectation.
In my culture, it's not so much that abuse is tolerated, but that it's not something that is, a deal breaker, I guess. Growing up, my mother endured abuse from my father, so it was something very normal to me. The friends around me, you know, they had, some of them were in abusive relationships as well. So when I first encountered physical violence in our relationship, I didn't see it as, oh, I have to leave this relationship immediately. It was more like, you know, okay, well, what happened? Okay, I did this, and, you know, this was his reaction, and it happens, sort of thing.
I was out when I was 16. I came out of the closet when I was 16, but I kept that a secret, mainly to myself for like the next 4 years. I told some friends vaguely around in a few years later, but if I had told them what was happening in the relationship, then I would ultimately be coming out. And if I had come out, I was scared that I'd get kicked out of my house, or that I would be, again, a disappointment. And already to be gay, shatter people, shatter my parents' dreams, my family's hopes. And then also to be in this abusive relationship where not only is my life at risk, but they're potentially at risk. So there was a lot of secrecy, and I pushed people away.
Some college students in abusive relationships can and do end them. But there are many barriers to breaking free of the abuse, and many reasons why someone might stay or find it hard to leave.
Relationships rarely start off abusive, and a person may generally care about their partner and hope the relationship will get better. One parent may not want to deprive their children of the other parent, especially if the children are not the direct target of the abuse. Prior threats may make the abused parent fear their partner will harm or kidnap the child if they leave. A partner may be distracted by academic demands and too overwhelmed to take action. A partner may be so isolated that some attention, even negative, is better than none. A parent may not have the financial means to move on. It's not uncommon for the abuser to take control of all the money, including college financial aid. A partner may feel like there is no available or culture-specific support, or may have had bad experience with law enforcement services.
And finally, fear of being abandoned, or beaten further, or killed.
But students can get help to escape the abuse. It can stop. People can change.
That night after he was arrested, and he was also incarcerated for a year for that, I went back with him, and because I was pregnant, and I thought, you know, I'm going to give him one more chance, try to have a family, and very quickly things just went back to how they were before. And what finally gave me the impetus to leave is he physically abused me in front of our son, who was less than a year old at the time. And I had to leave.
Something inside of me just told me, you have to find a way out. I don't know how, but you have to. But it was very difficult because I only had education up to the 8th grade. So with no education, no job, no resources, no support, it was kind of like, how do you do this, But it's that inner something of that feeling that something's not right. This is not right. It's wrong. Whatever little you get, whatever feeling, thought, something of it not being right, hold on to that. Think about it, plan it, let it fester, let it manifest into something out. Peek around and look at other people's lives if you have to and be like, why do they look happy and I don't feel happy? Whatever it takes.
I thought the behavior was stemmed from some kind of mental illness at the time. But then I realized medication isn't going to fix this. And this is a part of a personality or some learned behavior or something else that isn't just going to change with a pill. And after that, I realized that I woke up to it. And I got tired of it, frankly. I got tired of the threats over the phone and to myself and to my friends and family.
I think the least helpful were friends or people who who just ask you things like, why did you stay for so long? Why didn't you just leave? How did you let that happen?
No one deserves to go through something like this. And it takes a lot of work, I think, to try to get to a place where you can reflect and try to pull all the positive elements out of it, but that doesn't have to happen. And sometimes there's help. It's hard to say, you know, sometimes we think that some options aren't options, and at the time I felt like options weren't made options for me. Like the police, I couldn't go to them, but perhaps in some situations it is an option, and just looking at all those different options too.
The officer who took my statement, she listened to me for, I think I was talking to her for like hours. And so I felt like they took me very seriously and did everything they possibly could do to ensure my safety. But I think this had a lot to do with who I am and who my batterer is. He has a very long criminal history, and I have none. And so I think that played a big role.
I see and I hear a lot of things going on in the village, you know, so I don't think it matters about, it does and it doesn't. I think maybe the way that the police maybe come out and handle situations in low-income communities versus a little mini suburbia, I think might vary, but I think domestic violence is a straight across thing, that there's no borders, there's no colored lines. It doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor.
Maybe have them be more attentive to the state of the victim. Can they really handle that? What are all the options to get from point A to point B or get to a resolution? You have a trained police force, so why do you need me to talk to him? Don't you have interrogators? You know, I don't, you know, that set me back. And I would have appreciated the follow-up, because it was kind of like in meeting with one of the original officers that was on the case, in meeting with him to file a harassment report, he told me, I don't know what happened, somebody dropped the ball. That is not what a rape victim wants to hear, you know. Okay, well, pick it up.
Be open to the signs. Don't brush them off as it's a normal part of everyday life or it's a normal relationship. Really look at what's going on, past, present, what could potentially happen in the future if left unchecked, I guess.
Most helpful resource for me was my support group. I went to support group twice a week, and there's a facilitator who's trained. Very helpful for me because first I could actually talk about my story, which I think is empowering in itself, to be able to say out loud, this is what happened to me. And also obviously hearing other women's stories and how they've coped, how they've healed, where they are in life now.
It's more damaging to carry it all by yourself. It's more damaging to kind of leave it in the background because it's never really in the background. So I guess I would just advise to really lean on your systems of support, because where you're not strong, they can be stronger for you.
Believe, you know, because there's not one specific thing that I can say, because everybody's situation is unique and their experience is different. But know that there's hope and that there is people that have gone through that, have lived through that, and that are reaching out. So reach out back.
I kept thinking it's either going to stop or I'll get out of it, you know, next opportunity I get, I'll get out of it. 10 years later, and having a son later, which complicated everything, I was finally out. That entire decade of my life is gone, wasted. But You know, if you're in it now in the early stages, or if it's already been a long time, you don't have to live your life like that. There's a wealth of resources out there. There are people on this campus, there are people, you know, there are city resources, nonprofit organizations. There's so many resources out there. There's absolutely no reason why you need to go through this alone or why you need to live your life this way.
And everyone has a role. If you're starting a relationship or are in one now, trust your instincts. Take time to get to know someone before you decide to be alone with this person. Communicate your expectations and boundaries from the beginning. If you think you may be abused now, don't blame yourself. Violence is not your fault. There is no excuse for violence. Talk to a friend, family member, or resource person who puts your safety first. Don't do it alone. Seek help. If you think you may be abusing your partner, take responsibility for your words and actions. Don't blame your behavior on your partner, drugs, alcohol, stress, school, or other excuses. Separate from your partner for now and seek help. Contact us to talk to someone who can help you stop violence in your relationship.
If you think your friend, classmate, neighbor might be abused, you can believe and support the survivor. Listen to their story. Don't make assumptions or judgment. Encourage them to get out of the situation and report it to the police or university advisor. Encourage the survivor to safely contact a shelter, advocate, crisis line, or counselor. Contact us to find out more information on how to help. If a friend or someone you know is abusing their partner or children, take their abuse very seriously. Tell the person directly that you see their abusive actions, focusing on the behavior rather than the person. Supportively but firmly interrupt any excuses that the person gives. Hold him or her accountable for the abuse, making it clear that it has to stop now. Explain that this person is violating the legal and student conduct codes, putting his or her education at risk. Encourage the abuser to seek counseling help. Contact us to find out more information, even if you're not sure whether the abuse has happened and just want to ask questions.
If abuse is happening, tell us.
Your university and community resources are committed to supporting all students and building a safer learning environment.
Get us involved.